If you drive past the towers of Manhattan this morning, you won't see the glittering skyline of unchecked ambition. You will see boarded-up lobbies, shuttered casinos, and luxury hotels with for-sale signs swinging in the winter wind. The air smells faintly of fear and inked subpoenas. This is what collapse looks like in real time. At precisely 9:10 a.m. on Monday, January 27, 2026, a federal judge issued a landmark order: the immediate seizure of key assets owned by former President Donald J. Trump. Luxury condominiums in Midtown Florida resorts, Vegas casinos, and sprawling golf courses are now under court control. The order, blunt in its language and unprecedented in its scope, paints a picture of a financial empire, crumbling under the weight of its own excess. For months, Trump's network of corporations, shell entities, and personal holdings has been under investigation for years. A labyrinthine maze of mortgages, leveraged loans, and alleged financial misstatements. Today, that labyrinth became a trap, according to the court. The risk of asset dissipation is imminent and irreparable, leaving the judge with no choice. But to authorize federal marshals to step in immediately, the visual is arresting black SUVs with tinted windows, rolling up to the front doors of high-rises, where the golden Trump name once gleamed. Teams of court-appointed receivers are walking through lobbies that once echoed with champagne and applause. Guards once hired to protect celebrity status are now politely stepping aside, holding doors for lawyers and accountants with briefcases, heavier than gold bars. And for Trump, the irony is impossible to ignore. The man who branded himself as the ultimate dealmaker, the builder of towers, casinos, and global wealth, now faces a scenario he cannot negotiate out of. He cannot flip these assets. He cannot charm the courts. He cannot even tweet his way out of a federal marshal's visit. Financial commentators are calling it historic. Legal analysts are calling it shocking. And the public is seeing in real time the dismantling of a personal empire that once seemed untouchable. The optics are brutal: a king dethroned, a brand tarnished, a man surrounded by the symbols of his own hubris, now staring at a judicially imposed perimeter of his remaining fortune. The scene is eerily quiet, yet full of drama. No bulldozers this time, no cranes swinging in the skyline. Instead, the demolition is legal, paper-driven, and merciless. Each seized property, each frozen bank account, each suspended mortgage is a metaphorical wrecking ball, swinging through decades of ambition, ego, and excess. In this special report, we are going to take you inside the court order, examine the mechanisms of asset seizure, trace the collapse from financial hubris to legal inevitability, and show why Trump's empire, once gilded and untouchable, is now literally in federal hands. The towers may still rise, the names may still shine, but the control has shifted. The king has been told, step aside. The court is in charge. The news hit Wall Street, Palm Beach, and Manhattan almost simultaneously. By 9:00 a.m., the court order had been posted online. A 75-page ruling that reads like a judicial exorcism of a financial empire. Judge Patricia Caldwell, a Reagan-era appointee, did not mince words. Her directive: immediate seizure of all specified Trump assets is hereby authorized. Federal marshals shall take possession and ensure the preservation of property. Pending further litigation, the assets in question are staggering in scope: Trump Tower condominiums, Mar-a-Lago, the Bedminster Golf Course, multiple Nevada casinos, and dozens of overseas holding companies. The estimated value exceeds $10 billion, though the judge noted that true liquidity is highly uncertain. In other words, the empire is enormous on paper but vulnerable in reality. Across Trump's network, chaos erupted. Property managers reported urgent calls from confused staff. Security teams scrambled to follow federal orders. Accountants and attorneys descended on offices, with briefcases and laptops, rushing to compile ledgers, ownership documents, and bank statements. Inside Mar-a-Lago, sources say, the usual bustle of private parties and corporate retreats has been replaced by tension and silence. Staffers whisper that the first time in years the phones are ringing, but no one answers. Financial analysts were quick to weigh in. This is not a mere asset freeze, said Karen Liu, senior analyst at Belford & Co. This is a full-scale court-driven intervention. Trump's ability to move, sell, or leverage assets is gone overnight. It's unprecedented, legal commentators called it, a historic enforcement of creditor and federal oversight. Powers, it's almost cinematic, said Robert Hightower, a former federal prosecutor. Imagine a billionaire whose name is on every tower and casino. And now federal marshals can walk in and take control. It's rare, it's dramatic, and it sends a message. No one is above the law, Trump himself reportedly learned of the ruling in the early hours. Before a morning briefing, according to sources, he reacted with disbelief, anger and disbelief all at once. Security footage shows him pacing his private office, waving a coffee cup, muttering about deals gone wrong. The lawyers present reportedly attempted to reassure him that appeals and injunctions were possible, but the initial order is immediate and enforceable. There is no pause, no delay. The optics are extraordinary. For decades, the Trump brand symbolized dominance, invincibility, and a kind of untouchable financial muscle. Today, the imagery is reversed. Black SUVs, federal marshals, and court-appointed receivers are the new symbols of power. Employees outside Trump-owned properties are snapping photos of marshals, serving notices and placing lockboxes on office doors. Social media has erupted with images captioned "The Empire Takes a Hit." Trump Tower Federal Edition and Mar-a-Lago seized. For the public, it is surreal yet symbolic. A man who once built his reputation on wealth, influence, and deal-making is now witnessing the slow-motion seizure of his empire. The financial collapse is public, legal, and irreversible, or at least unstoppable. In the immediate term, the emperor has no clothes. The towers are untouched but no longer under his control, and the glittering veneer of success is being stripped away, one property at a time. To understand the magnitude of Monday's court order, we have to rewind decades to the rise of a man who turned real estate into a brand, and a brand into a persona larger-than-life, Donald J. Trump's empire was never just about buildings. It was about image power and the illusion of invincibility. Trump Tower in Manhattan, the glimmering hotels in Atlantic City, the sprawling golf courses across Florida and New Jersey. Each property was more than a revenue stream. Each was a billboard for success, a symbol that Trump could bend markets, cities, and some would argue the system itself to his will. The foundation, however, was more fragile than it appeared. Leveraged loans, shell corporations, and complex mortgage structures created a financial architecture that was dazzling on the surface, but brittle underneath. Over the years, Trump faced multiple bankruptcies in Atlantic City casinos and leveraged buyouts that teetered on collapse. Each time the narrative was the same: failure was temporary, loss was a minor detail, and the media creditors and employees simply needed to recognize the genius behind the brand. Then came the political leap. By 2015, Trump had traded his persona as a dealmaker for a platform as a disruptor. The campaign promised to make America great again, blending personal branding with national ambition. But while the rhetoric focused on patriotism, the infrastructure behind the scenes, Trump's sprawling real estate empire, remained deeply intertwined with personal leverage, private loans, and opaque accounting practices. Every tower, golf course, and hotel was tied into a network of debts, guarantees, and liabilities that few outsiders could fully map. Once in office, the risks multiplied. Holding both a global business empire and the highest office in the country created conflicts, vulnerabilities, and ultimately exposure to legal scrutiny. The overlap between public role and private assets became a liability, not an advantage. Federal investigators, financial watchdogs, and private litigants all began to circle. Investigations that might have taken years now had momentum, accelerated by public attention, media scrutiny, and financial instability in global markets. By late 2025, cracks were visible but underestimated. The Japan bond crash, combined with aggressive audits of Trump-linked entities, created liquidity strains. High-profile lenders, hedge funds, foreign banks, and private equity groups began to demand repayment or restructuring. Major donors and investors, previously loyal or opportunistic, grew hesitant as headlines linked Trump's political controversies with financial risk. The brand value that had insulated leverage began to evaporate. Enter the legal dimension. If you drive past 4 towers receiving a steady stream of law, you won't see the glitter. Alleged guy representation of the asset values. You will see boarded-up law statements shutter, and casinos and luxury hotels with for sale sign. Legal challenges and often resulted in settlement. The air smells faintly of fear or is mis-ink. Subpoena. The scale of this, what he calls early 2026, was unappreciably 9.1 m. Federal Monday, January 26, 2026, without immediate federal intervention, issued a landmark order: be hidden. The immediate seizure of key assets owned by former President Donald J. Trump the condominium is inevitable. Midtown, for on January 27th, Vegas Casino 6 and Sprawl federal judges are now that the risk of asset dissipation was no longer theoretical.